All right, good afternoon. The session for the Louisiana Disability Developmental Disability Council will be now in session. Our next item of business is the report from the Bureau of Health Service Financing Medicaid, and the chair recognizes Angela Womack for the report.
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back. I just want to highlight a couple of things. Our report is the blue in your folders. Starting over on page 3, mentioned in the last meeting, we have started redetermining all of our members. Our first cohort, their coverage ended June 30th if they were determined to be ineligible. Those people still have 90 days to reach out and provide needed information to determine eligibility. So if you feel like, or if you know someone who may have lost coverage and they feel like they're still eligible, they still have 90 days to be reinstated. Also in section 1, there's 3 bullets that tell you different ways that you can get reinstated for those services. You can go onto the self-service portal. You can email the packet back to Medicaid, fax, or mail. You can also go to one of our regional locations, and there's a link here that will show you where the closest location is to you. And you can also call our customer service line. We have partnered with multiple community partners. We're working with your Council on Aging. We're working with Southwest and Southeast AHEC. They're doing canvassing, going door to door. We have a list on our website that tells all of the contractors we're working with. These people are sending text message reminders, phone calls, emails, any type of contact that we have on file for you. They're using that to make sure that any member that is eligible returns those packets and knows when their eligibility is up for redetermination. So just so you know, we had to start this back. We did not speak to any of our members regarding their eligibility for 3 years. So March of 2020 until March of this year, no one was contacted regarding eligibility. So we had to redetermine over 2 million people. So it's not everybody at the same time. It's broken up over a 12-month time period. And we just want to make sure everybody who is eligible retains coverage. So if you have any questions, please feel free to dial our customer service line at the bottom of section 1.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
I think that it was confusing for me because I know you said it's been 3 years and so my son has a now waiver. I don't ever recall, and it could be just my memory's bad, ever going in and doing the Medicaid application for him. Maybe when he first got the now waiver. I don't know if his support coordinator was doing it or somehow, like I never did it before. So like,
No, some of your providers and support coordination agencies are reaching out to those waiver participants when they are up for redetermination. Is that right, Julie?
Yes.
We're reaching out. So once those waiver members come up, especially if they're seeing that you have not responded, they're reaching out to you and giving you a phone call.
yeah, but I guess the confusing part for me was that, okay, I've heard in all the meetings like you have to redetermine, but I was like, but that's not for my son for a waiver because he's already determined eligible for Medicaid. And so that was a confusing part for me. I mean, we did it, but it did take some conversations with the support coordinator and with different people. And so I'm just wondering, did we ever have to do that before?
You had to be Medicaid eligible to receive the waiver.
But that was the first, I don't remember doing that like every year or determining going in, because it was a simple process going on. The website is really easy.
And we
You
do
put in the answers and then it shows you your answers and you have to accept it. So it's really easy, but I don't know how that happened. It could just be my memory, but like, so that was just like, no, we don't do that. And that was my confusion on it.
So that's a great question. Some of our members are able to automatically be renewed because we have enough information from our sources that we can say, okay, we verified this, and they're still eligible. And you may not hear from us, or you'll say, hey, you're eligible. We're going to continue your Medicaid, and nobody has reached out to you. That could be the case, but that's only about 50%. So the other half of people have to respond to us to make sure they're still eligible.
Right. So I think just our DD population that has waivers needs to know that, like, we might have never had to do what I had to do, but now you have to do it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, Bambi, I guess I was one of the 50%. I just got a note, a letter that said, we've determined you eligible. I didn't do anything.
okay.
I mean, I went in and double checked it was correct. But that's all I did, and then I got, so, I mean, maybe you just didn't get the letter yet.
No, we had to go through it. Like,
Oh,
it was
yeah.
like, you have to do it and he's getting cut off at June 30th. So like, okay, so I did
Well, thank you
it.
for responding.
Then
yeah, and-
twist my arm, but I did it.
Yeah, thank you for sure for responding.
Wait, hold on, guys. We're gonna let her finish her report and then we're gonna finish discussion because that's the order. Let her finish her report and then afterwards we'll do the comment. But you have to be recognized by the chair before you can just start conversation. So our meeting can run in order. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you. I know that's a really important topic, so I'm happy to answer questions once we walk through. I'll move down to the second part in Act 421. If you're not familiar, this is our Medicaid option for children under 19 that have disabilities, and it disregards the family's income. So just like she stated, being on a waiver, you would think it makes you automatically eligible. It does not. Even our Act 421 recipients still have to be redetermined. So what we've done for those recipients is align their level of care assessment. So they should receive a level of care assessment packet along with your redetermination packet, but you have to respond to both. So again, just as OCDD and OAS, our Medicaid staff, once we see that someone has received their redetermination, we're going to call you. Say, hey, you've got this in the mail. We need you to have a look out for this. We need you to respond to both. So we're trying to align those to make it a little less of the documentation side for the members. Moving down to the permanent supportive housing, along with our sister agencies, we are supporting participants in permanent supportive housing. There's currently 3,850 individuals using that service. Moving over to page 5, the money follows the program, the person program. It's as of June 1st, 2023, we have approximately 3,967 individuals in that program, and those are individuals that are transitioning from institution into our home and community-based services. Over on page 6, as of April 30th, there's 2,249 individuals participating in self-direction, and we plan to have a stakeholder meeting for this service next month in August. So we'll make sure that the council receives the information on that. With our electronic visit verification, if you're not aware, we did put out an RFP. It was canceled, so we're in the process of working with the Office of State Procurement to develop a new RFP, and that'll be released to find us a contractor for this service. Sections 7, 8, and 8 are stats on our behavioral health services, starting with the CSOC program. As of March, there's a total of 2,500 people enrolled in that, and then the chart displays a breakdown by the region. There's also, starting on page 8 and finishing on page 9, network adequacy by region for behavioral health services. And then the conclusion of the report provides information for our ABA services that are offered through the managed care program. And it's broken down by MCO. So we have 6 MCOs, and it shows you each MCO breakdown on page 10. That concludes the report. I'm happy to take any additional questions.
All right, thank you, Ms. Womack, for your report. Are there any questions from the council members on the report?
I have one question. For section 1, you mentioned the first cohort was June 30th. I didn't know how many cohorts in total you guys had planned, or?
So CMS gave us 12 months
Mhm.
to redetermine the just over 2 million people. So and I'm not sure the system terms, but we did divide that over 12 months. So the first group of people received a notice back in April saying, we need you to respond by this date or you will close effective June 30th. The same happened for July. So at the beginning of June, we need to respond by this date or you'll close by July at the end of the month. So we're trying to give those people at least 30 days to respond. And with that information, we're also reaching out to those partners that we have throughout the state. And the canvassing organizations are broken out by region. So they have the regional information of each person. If they have the correct address, some of them are going to the house, knocking on the door, sending text messages, phone calls. So Please, if you know anybody with Medicaid and they have not updated their contact information, please share this.
Thank you.
All right, any more questions? You recognize her.
Thank you. Cynthia, can you expand a bit on the managed care program? I think I heard you mention. Where we're going with it.
Sure. So we have 6 MCOs, and I always miss one, so I'll go. ACLA is the first, in Aetna, Healthy Blue, Humana, Healthy, no, that's not Healthy. What is that? LHCC, and UHC is United Health. And our behavioral health services are through our managed care organization. So we have managed care fee for service, and those 6 MCOs manage the ABA program. So if you need services through ABA, you reach out to your specific MCO and they help you retain them.
Thank you.
Mhm.
For clarification, what does MCO mean?
I'm sorry, managed care organization.
Okay, well, just for everybody that didn't know.
No problem.
All right, any more questions? All right, if there's any more, if they're not hearing any, the report requires no action and will be placed on file. Okay, our next item of business is the report from the Office of Public Health and Ms. Lenora is recognized by the chair.
Okay, y'all definitely put me on the spot. I thought I was just gonna be here. Oh,
And I guess, oh, look,
Amy.
that's the report that Miss Patty.
Oh. Oh, we had a crazy, like Brandy, it ended up, and that's ETO, thank you. I'm gonna report from the Office of Public Health, quarterly report for development of disability, the Development of Disability Council. Children with special health care needs, we work to ensure children with special health care needs, and I'm gonna go down and give you the Family Resource Center, which I'm the manager, so of course this is why I'm here doing this. Our new referrals, we had 386. Total number of families engaged was 127. Total number of outreach efforts, 420. And the count of total resource needs identified was 598. And I like to say we're growing, and I think we're touching families in an amazing way. It is a wonderful thing to call families and have them just totally be at awe that we can provide them with resources. And I love being here because I am learning a lot from the council and how we are affecting families with children with special health care needs. And any questions?
All right, is there any other questions from the council members? Any questions from the public? All right, hearing none, the report requires no action and will be placed on file. The next item of business is the report of Office of Aging and Adult Services. The chair recognizes Ms. Mindy Richard.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Good afternoon, y'all. I'm going to go over a few things that we have going on in our office as updates. You'll see the package handout that you have is this peach color, and this is all of our numbers. I want to open those numbers, but I'd like to talk to you kind of in general of some things we have going on. As far as the legislative session, it was a good session for us. We had during the pandemic, there was American Rescue Plan dollars that went out to our department, and we had several initiatives, one of which raised the provider rates during the time of the pandemic to really kind of secure that direct service worker workforce and the support coordinators. And so the ARPA, we call it, money paid for those increases. Some of them were 30–40%. They were very nice increases. But that money was one-time money. And so we had proposed in our budget for fiscal year 24, which began this month in July, to I'm going to say bake in those rates into our normal budget. And so I'm happy to say with the veto session having finished yesterday that those rates are baked in our budget now. So what that means to our providers is that they can breathe a sigh of relief that those rates didn't end in June of this year, that they are now part of our budget going forward. And so that was a good thing for us and our partners. The other thing that was in our budget was to add an additional 500 community choice waivers. Now it comes at a good time because our wait list has been growing for those registry services. So you'll see on our numbers on the page here, let's see, about 1/3 of the way down, you'll see that we have 8339 people on our registry, but only just under 4,000 are awaiting services with nothing else in place. I'll just remind you that last October, we were down to below 900 on that wait list. So we've seen a huge increase in the request for services. So we're glad to see people asking for services. On the other hand, our ability with our waivers was not keeping up with our requests. So we're spending a large amount of time right now trying to, I'm going to say, skinny our wait list for people who have no other services back down to where we were, trying to make up that time. Right now, it's about 37 weeks that somebody waits on the registry before they get some type of service. And we've gotten it down to within 2 months. So we lost some ground over the past 6 months, but I'd like to look at the sunny side of it to say that people are now wanting services. And so we think that's a good thing. We've just got to catch up to our wait list. Some of the things that you'll notice in there that one of the things that affects that wait list is the direct service worker workforce. So we're spending a lot of our ARPA dollars with initiatives that should help stabilize that workforce. As you all know, we increased the minimum wage that was required for direct service workers to $9 an hour. We're just now starting to see impact for that. We don't have our final reports yet for the fiscal year, but all indications are that it has helped to reduce the turnover in that worker workforce. Another thing that we find is that we've been working on as part of our ARPA funds, and I think Julie will probably talk about this a little bit more. So Julie, I'll let you kind of
Go for it.
Okay. I'll steal your thunder there. Yeah, but the bonus payments for our direct service workers were part of our spending plan, and that was to provide a bonus for people who work from April of 2021 through October of 2022. So for those 19 months, workers that stuck it out and really worked during that time, we were offering a monthly bonus. Now, they had to meet certain requirements for how much interaction they have with patients. There had to be a certain minimum level. And those bonus payments have been pending all this time because we ran into some things with the Department of Labor that were going to cost the providers some additional taxes. So we had to kind of revamp the way we were doing that. But we just got approval last week on all those bonuses, and those checks will be going out next week. And so we're having various provider webinars to explain to people how it works, who gets paid what, when you'll get the check, all of that. But we're thrilled about that because it is millions and millions of dollars that will be going to the hands of those people who did that critical work during the pandemic. And so we're excited about that. There's some other initiatives that I'll talk about probably in future meetings because we're still waiting on approval from CMS on some of these other initiatives that I've kind of mentioned in previous meetings, but we're still waiting on approval. There was another legislative thing that came out of this year's session, and that was for us to form a work group with our support coordinators to look at some of their processes. And we have, Julie and I are working together with those folks to get together. These are issues we were already talking about, how quickly they get paid, what point they get paid. And so we're working through very collaboratively with that group. I expect there'll be some good things that come out of that work. And lastly, one of the things, and this is really more of an OAAS initiative, but as part of our business plan, I think you all remember that Secretary Phillips put forth a business plan each year that she was our secretary. And our second business plan, which ended in June of this year, was an initiative, one of our initiatives to increase the response rate. So when we send a letter to someone to say, hey, your chips come in, you're getting a waiver, we only heard back from the person about 5% of the time. About 70% of the time. We really did not get very good responses on that. So one of our initiatives was to increase that response rate by 5%. And so what we did is we've started, every time we send a waiver, we call the person and we say it's coming, because what we found out from a survey we did we call people and say, why didn't you respond? And they said, oh, I don't get my mail. They probably threw it away. They probably thought it was junk mail, whatever the reason. So we put them in blue envelopes. We made the language very simple, so it was clear to say that you have to do something when you get this letter. We call them now when we mail it to say it's coming, be on the lookout for it. And then those people that we don't get responses from, we call them and say, hey, did you get it? Why didn't you respond? Do you not want it? Et cetera, et cetera. What that does for us is if they don't need it anymore, they've moved out of state or their person passed away, it allows us to say, okay, let's close that one and we can open it for someone else. So we don't have offers languishing. And our response rate, we'd hope to increase it by 5%. We've increased it 14% in this past year. So I think at least for our population, I find that people just want to be talked to by a person. And so that's kind of our mode of operation going forward. So I guess I feel like I'm one of those people in that generation too. I get on those phone things and they say, press 1, press 3, press 4, press 5. And I'm like, I just want to talk to a human. And I think that I can relate to this workforce, our population, because they just want to talk to a human. And so, so we're doing that. I think that's most of what I had. I guess I also wanted to say that, as you know, we are partners with Governor's Office of Elderly Affairs, DCFS. We each have protective services for different age groups. Ours is adult protective services from 18 to 59. And our adult protective service team, we recently kicked off a project where we're bringing in some outside experts to look through all of our policies and all of our protocols and make sure that we have the best of the policies. So they're looking at best practices across the country and through these subject matter experts to make sure that we have very solid, very tight protocols. And they're also going to be doing a sampling of our investigative reports to make sure that we did everything we could have in our investigation. So kind of like an outside final exam, if you will. And so I'm excited about that. We kicked that work off last week. And so I don't expect that there'll be any major things, but again, we want to be the A+ student. So we're trying to make sure we don't have any gaps or blind spots that we're not seeing. And that's it for me in this. I answer any questions you all might have.
All right, well, thank you, Ms. Patty. Is there any other questions from the council member? Did I say one word? Mindy.
Yeah, that's okay. I answered all kind of things. Worse you call, we're good.
All right, is there any comment from the public? All right, hearing none, this report doesn't require any action, we're placed on pause. So our next item of business is the report upon Department of Education, Ms. Meredith Jordan. You have the floor.
Great. So mine is on the light pink paper. So I'll go through each of these. So excited for the conversations yesterday in our EE committee and some of the things moving forward that I want to do to support work of a lot of different people around this table. One thing that we are very excited about, we started this work about a year ago alongside SEEP, multiple stakeholders, is really digging into, one of our pillars, if you will, of our division is around ensuring access to high quality instruction for students with disabilities. And what I found very quickly is we have to be very intentional and specific about the what and the how. What does that mean for school systems? So super excited. In May, we finalized, launched, it's published, it's linked here. We talked about it yesterday in committee, our special education playbook for system leaders. So remember, when you take a look at this document, the intended audience is for school superintendents, special education directors, CAOs, chief academic officers. How do school system leaders really ensure inclusive, high quality instruction for students with disabilities across our state? So we launched that playbook during Teacher Leader Summit in May. Dr. Brumley and I have also presented that final document to our June SEEP. And we sort of had some interaction, some interactive discussions, solicited some additional feedback about next steps. what do we also need to, so that document is aimed at school system leaders. We are trying to better instructional practices in our school systems, but also realize there's a level of knowledge for families and parents. How do we get all the way from school system leader level to every level, principals, educators, support professionals around these best practices and what implementation looks like at all of those levels. And so again, we created this resource alongside national, state, local levels. We talked a little bit yesterday about some of the national recognition that we have gotten. That is not why you take big steps in our work. But also recognize that, we're going to have to start having some frank and maybe sometimes challenging conversations around current practices in schools. And so we know that we need sometimes some of those national organizations and experts to say, yes, you're taking the right steps, to question sometimes some historical practices and things that have been done. And not that they're being done because anyone wants to hurt children or wants to do a practice that is taking away from an inclusive setting. But we just need to start talking about them and what best practice and what research says. So our playbook puts into practice, and we really communicated this to special education leaders and superintendents at Teacher Leader Summit as not guidance. These are expectations. These are things that we want to see change for children in our schools to improve outcomes. And so the first practice is around ensuring high quality core instruction. And people say, well, Meredith, are you getting rid of self-contained settings? No, I don't have the authority to do that. We cannot get rid of any least restrictive environment continuum. We know that for some students, a self-contained classroom may be the best setting for them. And so we will never say or get rid of, we legally cannot do that. That is a part of IDA, to have a continuum of placement options for students. But for the vast majority of them, and for as many as possible, we want them to have inclusive instruction, high quality core instruction, content instruction. I can't tell you how many times I talk with parents who have concerns about their student who may be in a self-contained setting or who may have a significant disability, and they want us to try to teach them to read. They want us to expose their children to literacy, instruction, and opportunities. And so access to high quality core instruction is the very first practice. The second one is ensuring that students with disabilities have access to intervention in an equitable way. We have known for years that students with disabilities a lot of times need more time to master instruction. And if we're going to close achievement gaps, what that actually means is, and what U.S. Department of Ed actually expects us to do, is to grow students with disabilities faster, which is a challenge, right? So we've always known that they need more time, but a lot of times in school systems, we have not intentionally or not thinking about who may be excluded, but we may be providing tutoring before school, after school, or for the students who could come and see that teacher in different points of the day. Those were the kids who were getting some additional intervention. What this playbook calls for is that all students with disabilities have access to high quality intervention and built into the day. We've done a lot at the department around staffing and scheduling guidance and how to help support school systems in building schedules that are responsive to student needs, not adult needs. Or I like this period of the day off. This is the time of the day I want my planning period. But what schedules are conducive and best meet student needs? And so I think post-pandemic, we're seeing a lot of school systems who are building in, who are blocking out time for intervention. They call those things a lot of different things in schools: acceleration periods, what I need, when periods, intervention, accelerate time. And so we've got more and more school systems who have built-in intervention during the day. One of the things I really wanted to shift now is what's happening during that intervention time. Is it connected to high quality core? Is it connected to standards? And building on the foundational skills that they need to access grade level curriculum. So that's the second best practice is intervention, making sure all of our kids have that extra time they need. And the last best practice that is covered in our playbook is around content strong educators. How do we build and make sure that we have the best people in front of our students with disabilities, and making sure special educators are attending professional learning communities alongside general educators and content, making sure our special educators are attending science of reading training. Do they all know and understand how to support literacy instruction? The vast majority of our kids with disabilities in Louisiana are specific learning disabilities reading. We have a lot of children who have faced challenges with learning to read. And so really making sure that our special educators, our interventionists are included in all of those professional development opportunities. I don't think that it has been intentional. They have not always been included in certain professional development opportunities or been expected to attend some of those opportunities. So those are the three practices that are covered in our playbook. We know that there are a set of specific supports, communication, assistive technology, that are needed for some students above and beyond just 3 instructional best practices. So the I in IEP is always going to be, always has been individual. We know students need also some individual supports to be able to thrive within these best practices. But I'm really excited to really get some expectations in front of school system leaders around our children with disabilities and some steps forward in trying to close some achievement gaps. We have a lot more work to do. So releasing a document is not going to change practice. We all know that. So there's a lot of support that we're going to continue to do. We'll be doing a regional tour so that we want to hit every single, we didn't hit everybody. Not every school system leader, not every special education director comes to Teacher Leader Summit. We hit a lot of them, but we want to try to go to them and do a regional tour around these best practices to continue to support. We'll do some e-learning modules with them as well that they can also use. And we're also thinking through how to, I want to get in front of principals. And even at Teacher Leader Summit, interestingly, we talked and did sessions around for general educators and how they can better support students with disabilities, because I think for far too long, we have left out a key piece of our puzzle in supporting our students with disabilities, and also realizing that we've got to also support general educators with knowledge and skills about how to support these children who are in their classrooms. So we have a lot more work to do with our playbook, but very excited about starting that work and actually releasing that document. So I've mentioned a little bit about Teacher Leader Summit. I wanted to bring a bit of a debrief here and talk to you all a little bit about the sessions, additional sessions that we held there. That should clearly say we had nearly 6,000 school system leaders, educators, special education leaders who were in attendance. We did a special collaborative for our special education directors. It was very intentional to get them to come and take part in all of that learning that happens at Teacher Leader Summit. So we did a special session for them and did a special invite for them to make sure that they came and felt welcomed at Teacher Leader Summit. So we, of course, had sessions around our practices, high quality teaching and learning aligned to curriculum for students with significant cognitive disabilities. We are getting more and more requests around support for students with significant cognitive disabilities. So we did some sessions designed just for them. Lassard, we had many vendors who were present, helping us present at Teacher Leader Summit, utilizing paraeducators So we had sessions designed for system and school leaders on how to utilize their paraeducators to support students, highlighting strengths of special educators. How do we build them as content leaders? How do we try to target their strengths? For far too long, we have asked special educators to know and do everything, right? They have special in their title. And we feel like they can support reading. You're going to support math this year. You may support multiple grade levels. So how do we better staff for special education? And I think it'll also ultimately even help with retention. If I know that as a special educator, I'm going to be hired to support this subject, I can really become an expert in it, maybe a couple of grade levels, but at least if I can hone in on my strength, that I can provide some great intervention. We had some dyslexia sessions at Summit, literacy and math, of course. We had sessions around, and we're really trying to get in front of all educators and how to really connect the needs of a student determined by their evaluation and what is in that IEP, how those things connect, how they can add to and suggest interventions for students and what supports are needed. We had the Helen Keller Deafblind Institute come. We had sessions around executive functioning. I'm sure I left some off of this list, but we had a lot of great feedback at Teacher Leader Summit this year. So many folks came up just around the diverse learners and SPED sessions and said, this was the best one yet. So I don't know how we'll top it, but we'll try to for next year. But we're really trying to almost create like a mini SPED Teacher Leader Summit within the big summit, like really making sure that we have a lot of sessions focused on our students and how to support them. So our SPED leadership cohorts, we just completed cohort 3. We recognized them at June Bessie. We are launching cohort 4 in the coming months. We will have 22. So when I came into this role, which was during cohort 2, we had about 12. So we are nearly doubling. And that was one of the things that I recognize is we have to get in front of more of our new special education directors and support them so that, again, it's about that retention piece because special education is a lot. And there are a lot of dynamics. There are laws, funding, just data, a lot of different things when you talk about students with IEPs, and we want to retain these people. We want to support them, give them the support they need, the mentoring they need, so that overwhelming feeling doesn't get to them and they think, why am I doing this? I can go back to the classroom or I can go back to my job where I'm doing this single focus, but really trying to build a group of special education directors who will stay in it for the long haul and who will really commit. So we'll have 22 in cohort 4. And so these are special education directors or supervisors at that central office level who have, they're either newly appointed, so 0 years to 3 years in that directorship role. And so we're launching cohort 4 in September. This next item, about a year ago, I expanded our fellows and added a track for what we call our aspiring. So these are people who are, maybe they are principals, maybe they are SPED lead teachers or a SPED teacher or a pupil appraisal person who is not yet in a special education director or supervisor role, but they have experience and have the potential to fill a vacancy if one comes available or if they so these are people who are desiring to be in a directorship or a special education leadership role. And so, really, again, post-pandemic, thinking about all of the shortages, turnover rates, and even nationally, in state directors and special education directors nationally, trying to really get ahead of this and think through, let's start inspiring people to be in these roles and supporting them and showing them some of that knowledge ahead of time to really get them interested. And so we're launching cohort 2 of this. These applications are currently open. We'll be closing those soon to select our aspiring cohort to start soon. Our summer regional literacy tour. So our literacy division has traveled the state for their second annual literacy regional PD tour. It included 6 stops, lots of sessions. We also shared and targeted our special educators and our interventionists, because the more we look at the challenges that our students with disabilities across our state face around reading, and we know that's the foundational skill. We know that's why the vast majority of our children with disabilities are referred to and identified as a student who needs an IEP. We have been targeting them and saying, hey, we need you to come join these meetings, making sure they get science of reading training and know how to support reading struggles. And so we just finished that literacy tour that really focused on how to use literacy screener data to support growth. How do we set appropriate reading goals? And we'll be doing more in our office in diving into current IEPs, what do reading goals look like, and supporting educators around writing literacy goals and supporting that instruction. So I just wanted to talk to you all and let you know about the literacy tour. The department also recently launched our educational project progress and investment charts dashboard in June. This was really dreamed of and requested by Bessie. So you can access this link, and it includes a lot of progress indicator data on students across Louisiana and their performance. There is some student with disabilities data on there, but we have talked to stakeholders. We also have gotten some feedback. We want to include some additional specific data there on students with disabilities. So you'll kind of see here. So you guys can access it, take a look at it if you have any suggestions. But you'll see what the upcoming updates are also will include. And so once we get our 2023 spring assessment results, you'll see that updated. So the current assessment results are from 2022. We're still certifying and analyzing the 2023 results. So that will be updated. We will include the National Assessment of Educational Progress data, and OSIP and USDE also look at NAEP and those scores for students with disabilities. So that's one of the things that we need to start bringing more attention to, because NAEP assessments are not required in Louisiana. There's a selection process for a group of students and students with disabilities who are administered NAEP. It's not required as a state, but that data impacts us, and it impacts our students with disabilities as well. So we want to start communicating even more about NAEP results. We're going to add alternate assessment results. So that'll capture our students with significant disabilities and their performance on the Leap Connect. So we're going to add that to the EPIC dashboard. There are all of our ESSER incentive investments, those dollars. There are some things tied to that on the EPIC launch. So there's a lot of information on it. If you want to go take a look at it, if y'all have any suggestions, if there's anything else that you all would like to see on there, as public, as stakeholders, let me know, and I'm happy to relay that. But I wanted to share that here because it's new. We're launching our new teacher experience this summer on July 26th. The reason I want to share it with you all is we've added a focus group. And so this new teacher experience brings in just what it says, brand new teachers to the profession, gives them a community of practice and some learning and some support from the department as a brand new teacher. One of the things that we have done this year is we have added a group that is specific for special educators, right? So they'll also get the opportunity to be with other all new teachers in some of their learning, but they will also have a specific affinity group where they will get to talk about and think through specific things as a special educator, a new special educator that I may have questions about. What is it like to sit in, right? I may sit in my first IEP meeting in this first year. What is that like? What are my responsibilities? And so I wanted to share that with this group, that is something that we've added to our new teacher experience. We have some new family resources that I'm so excited Dr. Michelle is in the audience, because I kept remembering that meeting where we talked about, we really need some family resources for math. And so we have some new math family grab and go activities that you can do at home. So I've linked those here. And I also linked our family summer support toolkit, which really, if you go look at the summer support toolkit, it's great. I mean, as a parent, you can pick it up and think through, what can I do this summer to support my student? We have some specific resources in there for students with disabilities. We link to some really great things that our Families Helping Families centers have created as well. Lots of inclusive summer camps. What can I do with my child with a disability in the summer to bridge that summer gap? But that family support toolkit, we really messaged it to school systems and saying, you work with families on sending home. What are some things families can do in the summer? And some easy things, just ideas about going to the grocery store together, or what could we do at home as we're cooking to support literacy or to support math. So I wanted to share a couple of new family resources that were released. And then finally, just a SEEP update. SEEP met in June. We also do our retreat in June. We discussed our state performance plan, our annual performance report that comes from OSEP, including what were some of our state's key gains, what are some continued areas of growth. We're actually going to create a work group around all of that special education data that we collect, that we need to do a better job of analyzing and looking at those massive sets of data to determine next steps for our state. So we're going to be putting a work group together for that, diving into our indicator data, making necessary updates moving forward. We also discussed, again, our playbook. We engaged in our planning steps moving forward. And we also recognized our SEEP members who are rolling off, those who ended their first term, and or their second term. And I have on here, our next SEEP meeting is supposed to be September 20th. Make a tentative note that is likely going to change to September 27th because of building space and meeting space challenges that we're having. So, and we definitely want to continue to be able to live stream and to kind of piggyback on conversations about some of the updates. We're in conversation as far as SEEP and what the changes to open public meeting law will mean for SEEP. And we'll hopefully have that in place for our September meeting, if not for sure the November meeting, depending on when those rules are finalized. And then that's pretty much it for me. The biggest legislative item for us coming out of this legislative session that will live in my office will be our newly required dyslexia screening for all kindergartners, which is going to be a process because the bill calls for the State Department to select and pay for that. So we will likely have to go out to RFP, follow all of our procurement rules. So we are, of course, we will try to shoot for an implementation of that this year, but it will just really depend on procurement rules for when we are able to select and purchase that one statewide dyslexia screener for all of our kindergartners. And that concludes my report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, well, thank you, Ms. Meredith, for your report. Is there any questions? I see your hand, Jill, you're recognized.
What act was the dyslexia screening?
House Bill 69. That's the bill number.
Oh, okay, Ms. Washington, you're recognized by the chair.
Thank you. I have a question. This information here, who is it given to? Is it given to all schools, sped directors, like who? How are teachers or directors or whomever, how are they getting this information?
The
Is it just the website,
playbook information.
everything on here, like new teachers across Louisiana? How
Got you.
do they know that there's a new teacher experience? The cohort, how do they know about a cohort? The seat update, how?
So we have monthly teaching and learning calls. So definitely join those. So we have monthly teaching and learning calls. Our next one will be end of August. So we take a break over the summer.
And how do they know about the teaching and learning calls?
Our newsletters, our weekly newsletter.
And where the-
Subscribe to it. Go to Louisiana Believes and go to newsletters, and you can subscribe to get it every week. And that's literally where we make all announcements. Now, we also have a call monthly at the beginning of the month that's for system leaders. So superintendents, sped directors usually will join those as well, CAOs, CTE, finance, literally everyone in the central office building should be joining those system leader calls. Our teaching and learning monthly calls, we can go a little bit more into depth. Our teaching and learning calls are meant for sped directors, CAOs, usually your literacy, your educator development, any PD specialist in a central office, they will also join our teaching and learning calls. Definitely our weekly newsletters. We also have a principal newsletter that goes out, and we have charter newsletters. So I'm also trying to do a much better job at reaching our charter schools and making sure they're getting all of the information coming out of the department.
Thank you. Another question. It's on Louisiana Believes, the website, but what about pushing the information to their emails or some other? Because I don't see sped directors always just going to Louisiana Believes to look up this information.
Yeah.
Or to see the need to look up this information. Maybe it can be released to their email or some other form of communication to ensure that that they are getting the information, because if they're not receiving the information or no, like, you can't hold a person accountable for anything if they don't know.
Right. Yeah.
They don't, so I think just a better way of pushing this information out, because then you also have, they may not check their email, but at least you have receipt that this was pushed out, that this was given to them. And that way accountability can begin.
I also usually try to send and get in touch with, I have an email list for our directors, but sometimes they'll change. So usually as a backup to, I'll partner with our Louisiana, LACIA, our Louisiana Association for Sped Directors, and say, hey, can you also communicate this in case your list is more updated than mine?
Right.
But yeah, getting the information out and making sure everyone is seeing it at all levels is important. Otherwise, they don't know.
When you all do the audit, I know that that's very important to all sped directors. when you guys are coming into the schools and auditing them. You know, because everyone is different in their roles, but I do know that they're gonna take that very seriously because they are being held accountable at that
Right.
time. So maybe there's something that you guys can put in place, just so they can get this information,
Yeah.
and at least know.
Mhm. Yeah, good point.
Is there any more questions? Oh. First,
Yeah, he can go there.
okay, go ahead.
One question about the dyslexia screening with this new law, is that gonna take the place of what was previously required between kindergarten and third grade? So everybody's gonna be done in 1 year?
Yes.
Okay, all right, just want to get clarification.
Yeah.
And a couple of things, people in this room, and maybe you don't even know this yet, but what you said about the special ed conference within the conference for the summer, I forgot what it's called.
Teacher Leader Summit.
Teacher Leader Summer. When it first started, special ed teachers weren't allowed to go.
That's right.
It was purely for core content teachers. So that's a huge improvement. Because you're right, they all need to learn how to do everything. For that. The other thing is, yesterday, Dr. Bromley mentioned about lack of special ed talent for the director positions. I'm hoping that there's a discussion among y'all staff, because what happened with your predecessor, they took out the need for any knowledge or experience in special ed for anyone to be certified to be able to serve the position of special ed. That puts that new person behind the 8 ball two ways. One is they don't know what they don't know yet.
Right.
And the other thing is, it makes it very easy to manipulate by the superintendents who are looking at money situations only. So it puts them in a real awkward position, makes them less effective until they get to know some of those things. So I hope this conversation about adding some sort of requirement for someone to be special ed director, that they have some knowledge of special ed, practical application knowledge.
Yeah.
So but that was your predecessor, just so we know. Okay, and then I put one of the things that y'all have done really well is, and I was talking to somebody about this today, in order to have inclusion, sometimes a child's ability will make it more difficult for them in the general ed classroom. But with the course codes that y'all have created at the State Department level to allow teachers to teach basically 2 classes within 1 with just modifications, that's huge for inclusion purposes. So it'd be really good if the districts can get more information on that, because it seems like from conversations I'm having with parents, I think they might be forgetting that they can do that.
Yeah.
And so that will help with the inclusion issue. Pet peeve of mine is interventions. If y'all could provide training for teachers with intervention, because if you really go into the school system and look, almost never will you see an intervention class align with the curricular objectives in the general ed class. And most kids, but kids with disabilities especially, do not do well with isolated experiences.
Exactly.
It needs to be a reinforcement rather than today, in my class, we're gonna do vowels first, but then you go to the intervention class and they're doing nouns. It doesn't work well for kids with disabilities. And the last thing that I want to say is, when we're talking about NAEP, I wish y'all would go back and look to see, we see in the news all the time how Louisiana is declining, the students are doing work. And it's because of the pandemic. Well, it's not just because of the pandemic. If we'll look and see when that really started, I believe you'll find a correlation between when LEAP ceased to be about students and became more about teachers and administrators. Because now what we've got, when LEAP first came out, it was supposed to identify problems that kids were having. So teachers could then look at it, address it, and build them up in those areas of weakness. Now we're teaching the LEAP test, and I never said that before the last few years. But we're not teaching to the test. We are teaching the test. And with a great visual that I've got, there is this much in the world that kids need to know. The curriculum in K-12 will teach them this much. LEAP will teach them this much. They're leading with this. Some of them are. And so that's a good visual. Huh? That tells us why we're losing ground. And look, the state looks bad, but look at it from a different perspective. The kids get out of school and don't know nearly what they need to know. And it's costing the school systems a fortune, because if you go in there and look at the packets, I think I talked to you about this last year. Look at the packets that they send home for parents to do with their kids after, for their kids' second job. We need to teach what we need to teach and not teach the stupid test.
Yeah.
But teachers are scared not to teach the test.
right.
So that would be one of the issues that I hope y'all would be able to address.
Thanks.
Okay, the chair recognizes, what's your name? Mr. Spencer?
Yeah, and I just wanted to piggyback off of something she said. So you guys have this newsletter and all this information that's sent out, but you guys don't have a dedicated distribution list?
I have a distribution list for sped directors. I will say there is a challenge with turnover in charters. That's where I struggle with keeping a running list. I have a great list for our 64, our city parish schools. Yes, I have a list for them. We also do office hours. So I started those last year. We'll start those back up. But I would really like, for my office hours, I do get a lot of sped directors who attend office hours, but we also invite educators. If you're a teacher and you have a student with disability and you have a question, join our office hours, and we do keep that a little bit more open, and whatever question, we usually share with them some pertinent information or repeat something that I think maybe they haven't gotten. But also just question and answer, like try to help. So we're trying to expand our communication avenues a little bit. So we do have office hours as well. That'll start back up monthly.
So if you guys looked into maybe rather than directing it to the sped directors that would change a lot, maybe going to superintendents and then put it on the onus of the superintendent, because they're usually in that position, I think, for 4 years. And then letting them do the distribution so that the directors and all of the special education teachers are getting that information sent out to them.
Yeah, I really like that idea. I know what we used to do in the school system was we would take those newsletters, because it is kind of divided up, like special education, here's what you need to know, accountability and assessment. Although sometimes for special education, I need to know multiple things. I also need to know assessment. I also need to know finance. And so that is definitely something that we can encourage them to do as well. Like take that information, sit down with your leadership team, go through it. Who's responsible for what? What are our next action steps? And make sure that we've got people going to or attending the right things who need to be attending. I like that suggestion.
Yeah, I just know, coming from, I guess, the community perspective, there is a huge gap in knowledge in what is available for families versus, what's actually, people are taking advantage of.
Yeah.
And, really getting that community involvement directly to those parents, and then having those parents just push that information out to families.
Yeah.
I think would be a good step in the right direction.
All right, I have a quick question. So I know that you said that you're doing the screening for the everybody that started kindergarten for dyslexia. What about the students that missed that, like they're in first grade or second grade or whatever, and they need that?
Good question. So a parent can request it at any time, or a school system could do it at any time. The law now requires all kindergartners. So you can do it beyond kindergarten.
So you could just go act like a parent is concerned that their child has dyslexia. They can just go get the testing at any time. And how long does that testing? How long does it take for them that testing to get done from the school, from when the parent requested and it actually had to get done?
This is not much.
They're going to have the materials paid for by the state. It shouldn't take, there shouldn't be a long time before, when you request, hey, I think I'm concerned my child may have dyslexia or characteristics of dyslexia. Can you please do a screening? You shouldn't be waiting months for that to happen.
Right, and then you should get some kind of documentation on what the results were, correct?
Right.
Okay.
Yes. And so the law will also require for kindergartners that the parents must be notified of the result of that, I think within 30 days is what the law says.
whether they have it or not. Okay. All right, is there any more questions? Miss, okay, I don't know who was first, I'm sorry. Jill, I think Jill was first. Jill, you're recognized by the chair.
I thought Charlie, I'm back. It's to you, but I'm really excited when I'm watching this later to see how big your gaps range.
I'm sorry, I was daydreaming. I'm so sorry.
Back with towards you. So when I watch this later, I'm excited to see your hand just turned from.
My fingers were in control.
No, how? Never
No,
mind.
look, it was like this, okay. There's this much in the world to know. There's this much that K-12 will teach you, but then there's this much that LEAP covers. So the kids are leaving school with this. So that, it's just a very small part of what they need to know. And that's why businesses are still complaining. And that's why their scores are going down. We've narrowed the focus in not a good way to what we teach kids.
Okay, Miss me, oh, okay. Was Washington? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, Miss Washington, she was first.
Anyway, I
Okay,
have
Miss
two
King,
questions.
come on.
Okay, sorry. Like, when you said something about you guys have calls, you know, we call, so are the teachers allowed to be on these calls? And if so, they pull from class, you know, doing regular teaching hours, either after hours?
So we try to do our office hours late in the day, like
Okay.
3:30 for office hours.
Okay,
Teachers are not going to be on our teaching and learning monthly call.
Okay.
Those are for school system level teaching and learning staff, CAOs, SED directors. So they're not going to be on those calls. Now, we also do teacher leader newsletters. I don't think they do a teacher leader monthly call, but they do send newsletters out to teacher leaders. Even the principal monthly calls that we do, we also try to be cognizant of the time of the day, because during the day, principals can't just get up and go, you know, they have full days. But for our office hours, where we do say, hey, if you're a service provider or an educator, come on, you're welcome. We do, our office hours are every month. I think it's I forget what day of the month, Tuesday, last Tuesday or the third Tuesday, but they're at like 3:30.
okay. My second question is like, you're saying that the directors get this information, because like I'm on the SEAC committee. Why can't the committee members get this so we can disseminate it to other people that we know? Because like I said, going to school, I have to
Definitely.
paper, I'll make it for that particular classroom or whoever I'm in contact with.
Definitely. And I would definitely recommend that local SPED advisory councils are helping to get that information.
So
out
I
to the
asked the
community.
director of our committee for this. She should be able to give me all this information.
Yes.
Okay.
If they're following our newsletters, they're on our calls, they should know about all things happening. Yes.
Okay, Ms. Renata,
The playbook
Mhm.
for system leaders, if this giving, like right now, we're about to start school. Every SPED department has this playbook, and if so, are the SPED directors trained enough to present this as a professional development for the educators?
So they would have access to the link. We're giving them printed copies, really pretty copies, printed copies at our fall collaborative, which I think is October 17th. When I have them all come in person to me, they'll get a printed copy. So these practices are going to require shifts and decisions at their system level before that rolls out into schools likely. So can they give professional development on what these practices are? Yes. Start self-assessing. Where are we at with the school system? It won't change overnight. We've told them that this is going to be a process of implementation. We have asked them to start self-assessing. what are some immediate steps you can take? If you don't have intervention built into your school day that students with disabilities have access to, is that something you can do starting this school year? So we've asked them, identify those 1 or 2 things that you can do and make an action step for this year. As they really start to dive in with their system level leadership team and create a plan for how are we going to make these 3 shifts. And my goal is within a year. So I've got a lot of support to do this year. We just rolled it out. A lot of professional development, a lot of support with them this year. What I want to do is get to a place where we are piloting and we have school systems who say, yes, I'm all in. I want to make all 3 shifts and work alongside us through a pilot and where we can track student performance and really look at the impact of doing this well and doing it full on. I don't expect that our school systems are going to make all 3 of these shifts for the beginning of this school year.
No, I don't think so either, but I think.
Yeah.
No, I do believe that, I'm sorry.
All right, is there any more public,
Yes, I
Yes,
do. I do believe that in part, because there's got a lot of good information on here, but one thing as an educator, one of the most important things is high quality instruction. I do think that that should be something that should be presented to them to begin, because it's a playbook. So there's players on the team that need to know that high quality instruction, that is of importance. That is key. You know, we shouldn't, regardless if they're in a self-contained class or whatever class they may be in, we should not be giving coloring pages. High quality instruction is the goal. This is the play for the 2023-24 school year. You guys need to make sure that this is being played in this game.
Yeah. And we've got some school systems who are thinking outside of the box in some of this. So when we talk about high quality instruction and when you talk about that typical self-contained setting, okay? And you have typically one teacher in that room, right? All day with that teacher, they're expected to do reading, math, science, know everything. We have some school systems who are rethinking high quality instruction for all students. And even post-pandemic, when we've got a lot of virtual, we've got a lot of technology. But for students who have either environmental, sensory, behavior, they can't take that gen ed setting for that full time. Can they participate some? We have some school systems who are saying, that's fine. You're going to be in a special setting, but we're going to tap you into that high quality instruction and that core content teacher down the hallway. And so I think, and that's a shift, right? But we've got some systems who are starting to think, how can I, even for students who are in some of our most restrictive settings, access and be exposed to that high quality general curriculum core content. And I think those opportunities are great, and we'll keep highlighting some of those too. But I think you're right. It definitely starts with high quality core. And we kind of showed them a visual that what we haven't talked about in a long time is that general education, that core content is a huge piece of this puzzle that has to be held sacred, that time held sacred, and try not to do pull out services during ELA, during math, those areas where our students with disabilities struggle. We need to be aware of IEP teams adding lots of services to IEPs and what time of the day are those happening in that student's actual schedule. So you're right on point with everything that we're going to support them on.
all right, is there any more questions? Comments by the public? All right, hearing none, that the report requires no action and will be placed on file. The next item of business is the report of Government Office of Elderly Affairs. The chair recognizes Ms. Sherry Crane for the report.
Good afternoon, everybody. Try and stay awake. After lunch. So I'm with the Governor's Office of Elderly Affairs, known as GOEA, since there's so many people. I'll try and catch the acronyms as much as I can. So GOEA, just give you a little brief overview, is designated as a state unit on aging, and we administer the Older Americans Act, which is OAA. And within that act, we provide the services, and I'm not going to go through all of them on the list. I'm just going to touch on the high level ones that most people know about. The long-term care ombudsman, I reported last year that we initiated and implemented a program that is called Lapeer. And what that is Louisiana's program for empowering every resident. What we did was we set up a program that trains individuals in long-term care facilities to advocate for themselves through a 6-part empowerment program. And it teaches them how to help their fellow residents to improve their day-to-day life in that facility. Since we are limited on the number of ombudsmen that we pay, we try to get as many volunteers as possible. And so this is where we saw the opportunity to get the volunteers to initiate and be involved. So what we did, we had additional American Rescue Act funding for 2023. And so we actually hired a Lapeer trainer who has been hired to spread the program to more facilities around Louisiana. Our first initial focus was New Orleans. And so now we'll be able to expand beyond New Orleans and do this program. We had 3 new volunteers enter into the program. And I think I'd have to go back. I don't remember. I think we did 12 last year. So we have 3 already starting this program for this year. The ombudsman closed over 1,200 complaints, with 97 being resolved to the satisfaction of the resident or the resident representative or whoever made the complaint itself. We also have created a quarterly newsletter. The ombudsman, or my state ombudsman, did that. She shares stories, tips, reminders, and other information as she gets it. And we can share that link if anybody is interested in that. So that's for the ombudsman. If you open up to the next page, we talk about elderly protective services. So I'm just going to go over some of the numbers currently. Opened cases was 5,005 last year. And sorry about the date, that is incorrect. It's not July 1. It was as of June 30th, 2023. There were 539 cases classified as high priority and over 3,000 cases that were medium priority. And then we kind of just broke the number down as to what type of complaint it was or report of abuse. And, unfortunately, the highest was self-neglect with over 1,800 cases being self-neglect. One of our other programs that we have is Aging and Disability Resource Centers. We have 8 of them throughout the state, and we call them the ADRCs. They have all kinds of resources that are available to elderly and disabled adults, age 21 and over. We have some instances where, we have maybe an aunt that lives in the North region and, a cousin lives in the Northeast, and they're like, oh, well, I can get this assistance. And they're like, well, we don't have that available. That can be the case just because of, vendors within that region that ADRC has information on, that can help build that wheelchair ramp, whereas in North, they can't. So when they start talking, we have to kind of explain to them that the resources are not available statewide, unfortunately. We then train, those resource centers have communications and partnerships with a lot of vendors as well as the churches. So we kind of get in contact with the churches and say, hey, do you know anybody that can go build somebody a wheelchair ramp? Some of the times the churches have programs within their community or within their own local church where they have somebody that will donate their time or their lumber or whatever so that they can actually get that same service. It's just not through a readily available service. So we have an 800 number that you can call for assistance there. The next program is the MIPA program, which is Medicare eligible individuals relevant to Medicare services. And we have portions of that, which is LIS, which is your low income subsidy, as well as MSP, which is your Medicare savings plan. So they have open enrollment every year, and the seniors can go into the councils on aging or their local senior center and get help in that enrollment each year. Let's see. Then on the last page, it just gives some of our collaborative, other task force that we join up with, MDAC, being task force and so forth. And then I kind of want to just give some information over some of the House bills that were passed with the governor's office of elderly affairs. If you remember, I'm not sure if it was the last time I reported or the time before that, we were talking about an upgrade to our reporting system for the feds, where we asked, to get funding because we did not have the funding, and it was like over 800 something thousand, so that we would be in compliance with the federal reports. We were granted that in House Bill 560. So we have had the kickoff meeting and one other meeting to kind of go over what the direction of getting those updates implemented. Unfortunately, it's not going to be within a year. So, if I'm still on the board the next year, I'll be pulling my hair out about this time, but, just give you a heads up. And then we had House Bill 2 and House Bill 560, where some of our councils on aging and specific senior centers receive some additional direct funding. So that's going to help some of them with some of those services that they either ran out of funding by the end of the year to help constituents. So that'll help there fill a gap. And then also our Senate Bill 116, we were able to increase the senior center funding for all senior centers from 25,000 to 50,000. And we received a unanimous vote from both chambers of the legislature. So that was a big win for our senior centers on that. So that's the end of my report. But if you have any questions, I will gladly answer.
All right, well, thank you for your report. Thank you for your report. Do you have any comments from the council? Questions? From the public? All right, hearing none, this report requires an action to be placed on file. Our next item of business is the report of the Government Office of Disability Affairs. The chair recognizes Ms. Bambi Pono for her report.
Okay, guys, my report is on this green color paper. Of course, we've talked about in the meetings that we have our annual conference next week. We have.
Are you sure?
I'm sure.
The last one, I promise.
So we have over 600 people registered. So if you are not registered, you need to get on the bandwagon and get registered. The link is there. If you look on the last page, there is the complete list of all of the topics. We're really excited about this year. We put out the request for proposals and we received so many great proposals. Like it really wasn't a lot of work on our part because we just had some great proposals. As in the past, we kind of had to work with people and ask people to do proposals. But that really, I think that really speaks volumes to the conference and that people want to be a part of it. So if you look at these topics, they're really great. If you go to the link that shows you the schedule, you can see who's presenting and their bios. Really, really great speakers. There are probably some people that you maybe don't get to hear in other venues. And so I really encourage you guys. And I kind of just went through here. We have 6 sessions on education, 4 on employment, 5 on health, 3 on accessibility, and some that cover multiple areas. So there's 22 sessions in all. You register, you get one link, and you can jump on at any time, whatever sessions you want to get in on. If you can't listen to the one you want to listen to, you'll get the recording of it. So please register. Also just want to say one of the legislative bills, I don't think anyone spoke about yet, but the Disability Voting Task Force made recommendations that became Representative Willard authored a bill, HB 499, and it provided basically an overall, like kind of a overarching kind of recommendation, not recommendations. The recommendations came from the task force, but the bill is going to enact like having an ADA coordinator in the Secretary of State's office, having a disability voting advisory council to the Secretary of State, require some trainings around accessible voting. So that's a really, really good legislation that passed this year. And of course, we have linked, if you go online, you can see our spreadsheet of, we have over 100 legislative items that we're tracking this year. And mostly we got the outcome that I think the disability community wanted overall for most things. But one thing I would just caution in regards to legislation is that there were some bills that were authored that didn't make it through the process. And you know, partly I think because the governor would have vetoed some of them, you know, particularly around some of these education bills. I'm really concerned about next year. They've been authoring these bills every year, and they're bills that specifically say that they don't have to provide these services for kids with disabilities, specific exclusions. And so I think the council really needs to be cognizant of that when you look at the legislative agenda next year, that it's not so much what maybe what you support, but have the resources within the council to be able to oppose some of these bills that we can anticipate will be brought up again next legislative session. Also, of course, the Governor's Advisory Council of Disability Affairs has been meeting. We'll meet again in September. The SICC for Early Steps, which is in our office. Our director, Alicia Vaillant, her last day is July 31st. She's going back into education, administration, education. So she'll be leaving us, but we also have, there's a new director for Early Steps, Carolyn Oglesby, and we're glad to have her in that role and be working with her. And then the MDAC, Louisiana Emergency Management Disability and Aging Coalition, we've been holding these monthly lunch and learns, and we've been having between 150, 200 people attend the lunch and learns. They're at noon every day. You can see that on the paper, we had access to assistive technology after disasters, start trainings and why it's important, and then Torque of Hammond provided did a lunch and learn on their plans as a provider for evacuation. So we've had 3 of these lunch and learns, highly successful, really engaged. Then we have another one on August 8th, which has to do with people who are electricity dependent. And we'll have Power Outage Partners who has working with Department of Health, and they're going to present. So I encourage you guys to register for that. And we have several planned out, I think almost through the end of the year. So, and then we record all of them. So you can see we put it on YouTube. So you can go back and look at that. And then Amina, who was sitting back here, I think she's out in the hallway. We have she's a governor's fellow. She's at Southern University, majoring in rehab counseling, and she's been working with us this summer. So we're really glad to have her. And she's doing a policy proposal in regards to disability service offices. And she was going to kind of do it kind of broad, and she's narrowed it down to funding in regards to the disability service offices at HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities. And so that's really what she wants to do as she moves, finishes school. And so we're really glad to have her in our office this summer. And that's everything for me.
All right, thank you, Ms. Tansey, for your report. Are there any questions from the council? Any from the public? All right. The report requires no action and will be placed on file. Our next item of business is the report of Disability Rights in Louisiana. The chair recognizes Ms. Tony Roque. I know you don't have a report, but do you have anything that you want to present to the council?
No.
All right, well, we'll move right along since he doesn't have anything.
Where
Our
was?
next item from the Family Help and Family Center, and the chair recognizes Ms. Nicole Corey.
Ours is a little two-pager you'll have in the folder. And doing this is so you show you kind of the other things we do at each center. And on your first page, it should be actually this is the order. We're different numbers for different. You can see each of the centers, and we put how many unique contacts we've had, and then the units of service. Unique contact is I'm in contact with the person, they come into the center. The units of service are what were the different ways we help them. So you'll see unduplicated, and then units of service. And then just some of the prevalent disabilities that we have in our different centers that we've encountered providing service, in these boards. And then you just have two paragraphs, and 1 and 2 that highlight a couple of centers, in each report. I'll do this again, so I'm not here, but then I can talk. So that's just the research that our crossroads, then started going to the crossroads. 1992 they were set up, and they talk about the different programs they have. Of course, Bureau of Family Health, and all this is outside of our DD contracts. They also have Project Gumbo, which is a statewide competition for students, special needs. LDOE, they have a regional family support project. Their OCD contracts with the Central Louisiana Community Services. And they also have the Early Steps contract up there, and then Early Steps community outreach specialists for regions. So that's Mr. Jim Center, Mr. Jim Sprinkle, and that's up in Alexandria. Family Help and Family Acadiana is mine, and we serve the Acadiana area, our 7 parishes there. Our contract with our human service district is Acadiana Area Human Service District, and we make sure we connect them with information about disability systems, any families coming in, we make sure that they're connected with all the services, Act 378 services and things over there. Our Bureau of Family Health contract, we're supporting families of children and youth with special health care needs and providers, and connecting the providers, the families, and the FHF centers together, kind of closing those gaps. We also have a community outreach specialist in Region 4. We also have a contract for Louisiana Department of Education for support for students with disabilities and special health care needs. Another huge one we just finished through Beauty Council, the Louisiana Youth Leadership Forum. One of our delegates is actually here. We have a couple of our staff members. Louisiana, of course, YLF is a 3-day, 2-night residential leadership program. It was incredible. We're going to have pictures and a lot of stuff to show you at our next meeting. And it's the natural progression to partners in policy making. So we had all kinds of different sections. Staff came on the Thursday and we got ready with their training. Delegates came on the Friday, and we had a lot of different sessions about disability pride and culture, self-determination, advocacy. We had speakers talking about how they, one you might know, Mr. Rashad Briscoe, about his experience.
It was fun.
The next day, we went to the state capitol where the Latino leaders met us, and we had a mock debate and produced a bill, went on a tour of the Capitol. We came back that night and had a dance. The next day, we had panels on dating and relationships. We had YLife, which was everybody had a certain amount of money, and they said, okay, we have to figure out, can you get benefits? You go sign up for SSI, SSDI. And we had different choices. You're approved, you're denied, need more information. So that sent them to the next thing. If they were approved, they had to go to the bank, working out, setting up a bank account, maybe talking about ABLE accounts, things like that. But it went through all kinds of stuff, housing, transportation. Of course, we had, partners there, Lighthouse Louisiana for benefits planning. And at the end, they could say, do you have any money left? Are you bankrupt? What happened, with your plan, your good life, as you went through and saw, this is the money I had, and these are the choices I had to make. And then we had a talent show. Can't wait to show you all of the different. And then we had a graduation ceremony. So,
We have a video.
we have a video.
No, we don't. Never mind.
So that was YLF. We're already getting ready to planning for our next one. So that's another big thing. We're also an alliance member of Parent USA. And that provides training. We have volunteer support parents who get training in peer-to-peer support. And parent to parent is about like, let's say you have a child with a disability, just got diagnosed, you speak Spanish, and this is, and your child has, autism. And you're trying to get connected with a trained support parent that speaks Spanish, that has that particular disability. They can contact us and we can see, do we have a trained support parent that matches that? If it is, we can match them and they're supported for a couple of weeks, making those connections if they get ready for their journey in the disability world. If we don't have that particular parent, there's a national support system. We can shoot out to the listserv and say, do you have somebody that matches that? So we did a panel for GOTA last summer, and then we've done a lot of outreach and had some trainings, and we're continuing that this year. So overview, because you kind of see families helping families, the general idea of what we do. And then each center will have other specific contracts depending on the needs of the families in that area. I think we could improve about that.
All right, thank you, Ms. Flores, for your report. Are there any questions from the council? Ms. Jill, I see your hand. You're recognized by the chair.
So in our committee, I have two questions. In our committee, we had a lot of issues with that was brought to us with a certain center in some deliverables that may not have been met. Is like, do these numbers reflect that?
Yeah, you'll also have, like the deliverables, like for the FHF centers for Community Council. These don't correlate with those.
Okay.
These are for the fourth quarter of this fiscal year, and it's showing unduplicated. We show this for Bureau of Family Health a lot of times. The contacts we had, just, I contacted you one time this month, you count as one. And it's showing the service we provide, but it's not breaking it down like information referral, peer-to-peer support.
Okay.
Things like that we have for the DD council contracts.
Okay. And this, okay, so this report isn't, and this report does have all 10
this has, yeah, this one has all.
Okay.
Even the Greater New Orleans one, which does not have a DCC contract.
It's the best one. Sorry.
I'm a little offended, don't you?
Mine's the best one I have, so I'll shut it right.
All right, is there any, we done, Jill?
Yes, ma'am, thank you.
All right, is there any more questions or comments?
Real quickly, I just want to take this opportunity to thank y'all, the council, for that extra money that y'all have been working so hard for the last couple of years to get us. Because we've been able to do things, and we gave the DD council a report on what we did with it. But specifically in our center, we were able to get a new training room where we can do hybrid training. People present and people online at the same time. We don't know how to use it yet. But we're planning on doing that, and that was done because of the money that y'all gave us. So we really appreciate that.
And I'm just echoing it. Thank all of you for your support in allowing, helping us to get that extra money. We were able to upgrade our information and technology hardware and all of that with the new phone system. We had an antiquated system here. So it allowed us to do that and work on upgrading what we do, what we have there to be able to reach the people we serve more efficiently. So thank you so much. Very well needed.
One thing, just a suggestion for the report, because some of the other agencies do it. If y'all have any links to your website specifically for newsletters or upcoming events, I would say include that in here as well. Just so when whenever we have it on the website, if folks want to go there and they can see what's going on in their region, which I encourage everybody to sign up for your Families Helping Families newsletter. But also, y'all just have it on your website. I know a lot of you put your trainings or your newsletters there. A link to that information so folks can see what's going to be coming up. If they wanted to access any of that. That would be helpful, I think.
All right, any more questions or comments? All right, hearing none, there's no action for this report, and it will be placed on one file. The next item of business is the report from the Office of Citizens with Development Disability. The chair recognizes you.
All right, mine is the kind of beige color book in your packet. So I will not read the book to you, but the first few pages are data that the council has asked for over time to be able to have a feel and a better sense for people who are supported in our home and community-based waivers. And so there's information there. You can see over time, we did early on in COVID have somewhat of a backslide. We're serving more people every year in our home and community-based waivers. We are keeping a close eye because we're also seeing that the average cost for waivers. So what that means is we figure out for every person, how much are we spending just on waiver services for those folks? And what we are seeing is that over time, that number is going up. And so we do keep a close eye on that. When we started giving this data, it was because we wanted to make sure once we did eliminate the waiting list that we wouldn't have to go back to it. And so we don't really have a certain number of slots anymore. We have a certain amount of money. And so we just have to keep a close eye on that. And the way we estimate our money is by using the average cost of the waiver so that we can then multiply that out. So no issues, just letting folks know that's really how we monitor that. The council's also asked for information related to our screening for urgency of need, or our SUN, which is what is the screening that we use to determine if someone has urgent and emergent needs and give a home and community-based waiver offer. So you have information about the number of screenings that were done in the last quarter and why. And then finally, just in terms of data, we do have early steps participant data, so you can see the number of children that we see in early steps broken down by the different age groups. And then in our report, we move on to some of the highlights of our major activities. So I will touch on a couple. One of the things that we've been working on since 2014 is coming into compliance with the home and community-based settings rule. And so we are nearing the end of that. Louisiana, along with 43 other states, are now under a corrective action plan to get us across the finish line. And for us here in Louisiana, it's primarily about making sure that our day programs and our employment services ensure that people have opportunities to do that in the community and be a part of the community. We are super excited. In fact, as I was sitting here, I just got the email that we are going to be able to make some changes to our rates for our day program and employment services. So a lot of times in the past, you would have one staff person with 8 people. And so when you'd go in the community, it'd be in large groups. Or if you were going to do employment, you would see kind of like a large janitorial crew because you would have one person with 8. And we've now got some new services in our waivers and new rates to go with that. Because if you only go with 2 or 3 people, of course, that's going to cost more money. You're going to need more staff. And you're going to need a higher rate to be able to support that. And so starting October 1st, we're going to have rate increases for those services that are in those smaller groups to start helping with that. We also are doing a lot of work right now related to the post PHE and unwinding what we had in place for our home and community-based waivers. We have scheduled a lot. There's still a lot of misinformation about come November, what can happen, what can't happen. There's still some folks who have the understanding that in November, family members living in the same home will not be able to be paid caregivers. That's not accurate. We do have to have safeguards and guardrails in place. There will be a process, but there will be the ability for that to happen. So we have in the next 2 or 3 weeks, some training specifically for our support coordinators, so they can help explain it to families. We will follow that up with webinars that we have for our home and community-based providers and webinars for our self-direction employers, so that everybody has, we did the road show, but now we want to get into more detailed information about all the plans and what will be happening. We also plan to do a road show in the fall, similar to what we did in the spring. That was very well received, going out around the state and having people have an opportunity to be in person and hear from us and answer questions. We've talked a lot about the American Rescue Plan Act. So again, I won't go over all of the information, but we were really excited that there was a lot of dentists. So we now have, Louisiana was one of the first states to start having comprehensive dental services for adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. But what we found is that maybe there wasn't a lot of access. So some dentists, there wasn't enough dentists who knew how to support folks. So we've now done 2 trainings with the Louisiana Dental Association, which were continuing education. So the dentists got training on how to, in their practice, support people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And then the Louisiana Dental Association has regional dental associations that do more like lunch and learn. So less formal, but they can still get continuing educations units. And almost every region has now reached out to us, and we're able to use these funds to also sponsor some of those smaller lunch and learns. And so we feel like we're really trying to help get the word out to dentists to help them understand how to get their practice in a way that they can support and support our folks. Mindy mentioned the bonuses. We do have a couple of new initiatives we did get approval on, so we're sort of working our way through that. We know we've talked here a lot in the council the last 2 days about services for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities and behavior support needs. So we're going to put some extra efforts there. We also know that not only is there a direct support workforce crisis, but we have a shortage of people who are support coordinators who understand how to support our population. We also know that there's a need for registered nurses and LPNs in our to provide skilled nursing services. So we're going to use some funding to do university partnerships and we've got, I know we've got Southern and BRCC involved, but we're reaching out to some other colleges and universities. And what we want to do is meet with them and start building curriculum. So in the School of Social Work, part of one of the classes that they would then be required to take would have curriculum about support coordination, case management. So it really would apply to more than just the IDD population, but it would just expose folks to that and that career field. Same with nursing, when you do skilled nursing, it's not home health where you're doing pop-in visits. It's not a hospital. It's a little bit different. And so giving some exposure by building curriculum to help students understand what those other possibilities are. And then, of course, at the community colleges, helping to look at curriculum. So when people are getting out of those community colleges, they may be able to be more effective direct support professionals. And then lastly, we got approval, which if you've heard me talk before, I've talked for probably 10 years now, telling y'all we were trying to get our plan of care and our assessment on an electronic platform. So we've got funding and we're going to be moving forward with trying to get that going. So a lot more to come on those projects. We just got approval on those. And the remainder of the report gives you some additional information about our resource center. We did talk about the resource center yesterday in our one of the committee meetings. So if folks are interested in more information, that gives you a little better idea or more detail about what our resource center activities are and specifically work we do to help people be able to continue to live and thrive in the community. And Jill told me to be brief, so that's about as quick as I can go, but I'm happy to entertain any questions.
All right, thank you, Julie, for your report. Any questions from the council?
I have a question, Julie, in regards to the dental coverage, you said like you're trying to do outreach so that dentists know how to work with our people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. But like, for instance, with my son, we have a great dentist that works great with him. He has his dental issues, but like, I don't think they're in network. Like I went and looked at like who's in network for the dental insurance that he has. And so is that an issue of them not accepting that coverage?
One of it partially, so they would have to be enrolled with one, and Tangela, if I say something wrong, you can kick me, but they would have to be enrolled. We have two, those services go through two dental managed care organizations. Now, one thing that some dentists have been hesitant to enroll, because a lot of times if you enroll, that means you take any of the Medicaid population. But this is according to Brandon, so correct me if I'm wrong, but for this particular program, a dentist can enroll with one of the two dental managed care organizations and say that they will provide services for the IDD waiver population. And then they don't have to open their practice to others. So there is an opportunity, and they have found that there's more dentists who are willing, who have been providing those services, who are willing to enroll if they know that they can serve that population. And again, correct anything I might have just said. That was
right. Is there a rate disparity? Like, is the reimbursement rate?
Now that I can't answer. I don't.
I'm
not familiar. Yeah, I
okay.
don't.
I know sometimes that's an issue with any doctors take Medicaid, the reimbursement rate might be less or something. So I
know that they were asking them to look at that. And I know there's been a lot of work done on the rate for things like anesthesia. Because what some folks were saying is if they needed the anesthesia, that the dentists weren't able to get in, and there's something around the reimbursement. So I know they've done a lot of work around that, but I'm not sure about the specifics in terms of your comprehensive dental services and how that's covered under DentaQuest and
MCNA.
Yeah.
feel like if a dentist, if they would become whatever provider under those plans, and they say they could take IDD, like they're just in that service system. But like if the dentist is at capacity, they don't have to take everybody who comes into their door, right? They can say that they're at capacity.
I don't know that.
That's a provider issue. Yeah, that would be something on the provider. It wouldn't be something that Medicaid would regulate.
Okay.
But just to add on to what Julie was saying, as part of our business plan, it was to do an overall rate review. So I don't think we've gotten to dental services, but they are looking at all the rates across the board.
All right, is there any more comment? Public? All right, well, hearing none, the report requires no action and will be placed upon file. Our next item is public comment. And that is the public comments can be on any area of concern or question. Each person will be recognized by the chair, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak. So do we have any public comment? Phil, you're recognized by the chair.
This is more a staff question, and maybe, but no, the FHF packets for New Orleans were only distributed to certain council members. Is there any way y'all can contact that center and get more copies so every council member can know what's going on?
Sure.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
I mean, we probably have a scanned copy. It's not going to be in the folder that's laid out with the tabs. But I mean, the content would be there that we send.
I think it's kind of a disadvantage to talk about an issue that only half of the council is aware of.
There, Bambi.
I just had a question about the membership. I know that we have maybe some membership vacancies that are coming up. What is that plan for that? Can you let us know? I guess it's for Amy.
Yeah, I have, so we have 3 people who are still, whose names are still sitting in the boards and commissions office waiting for appointment. So I have followed up to see, they were delayed because of legislative session. So that's why, but hopefully they appoint those 3 soon. With the nominations that were made today, or the votes made on electing new officers, we will have 2 parent seats that come up in October, 1 parent seat that comes up in November. And I believe there's another one coming up in January. So we will be putting out a call for, actually we already did put out a call for parent applications. We did that a few weeks ago. Ebony will get. I have only received 2 so far since we put out that. So we will put it out again in the upcoming weeks. July 7th was the date that it went out. With the deadline for applications of July 28th. But seeing as how I've only gotten 2 so far, we're gonna have to put it back out and extend it. And then we will work on getting, as soon as I get some applicants, we will work on getting membership together, and I'd really like to have some names for council approval by the applicant. We can get it. Get appointments on.
Okay.
I'll be talking to you, Joe.
All right.
You seen me Monday.
It's true.
All right,
Spencer, really appreciate you here today. Just wanted to take a few moments, just to bring you guys' attention. Something that I came across, I guess, over the last 9 months. Louisiana revised statute 17173 permits outside behavioral health services to be administered in the school setting. The law was originally formulated to make sure that there wasn't a disparity between those health services that were being provided outside of the school and then the particular BIPs that are being implemented in the school. One thing that it appears to be apparent is that the law does need some modification to ensure that the services are granted. When you look across the state, there are various parishes that are very willing to allow those services to come in because they understand the need that the child has. As well as also how the services can improve the overall learning environment. But there are other parishes that do not recognize that need and draw very hard lines in the sand at preventing those services. So I've been reaching out to various state senators, trying to get them on board to try to look at some improvements into the law. And if you guys have time, I strongly encourage you just to look into it a little bit more. I'll be available after if you want to talk about it a little more in depth. But thank you.
I would like to talk. All right, Ms. Stewart.
Can you repeat the bill that you?
Yeah, it's by statute 17173.
All right, any more questions?
Yeah, I just had a question. I believe that law was something that the DD Council had advocated for. It's to be able to have the ABA providers to be able to go into school. But what you said is absolutely accurate. There's disparities of districts and, it's something that we need to look at. It doesn't make sense to me that our districts the ones that don't want it, it's a benefit to them as added service, is helping with those really complicated behavior needs. So I'm really glad you brought that up. And I would encourage the council to look into that. The law exists, so we should really make it to where everybody all the districts have to comply and kids have access to that. Services.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? Okay, we do have an announcement for our diversity, equity, and inclusion. There's a dual poll request that was emailed out to all the council members on 6/21. Obtaining the date that would be most beneficial to all council members, and the results following. The training will be held upon September 9th and September 13th from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. So those dates again are September the 6th.
Wait.
Nice.
What?
I'm sorry. 9, September, right? September, what did I say?
You said 9.
I meant to say September the 6th.
Six.
Excuse me, that's my dyslexia coming out. And the 13th,
Need to go to both or just one?
both,
Both.
they're both.
Can we purchase the tape virtually?
Yes.
Okay,
It'll be first.
great.
So I could write it down.
Write it down. Okay, so the training for the diversity, equity, and inclusion will be held September the 6th and September the 13th from 9 a.m. to 12:30 p.m.
I couldn't even work.
Okay, and but after this announcement, I just want to thank you all for all of your time and your commitment that you put into all of the different issues that we've been working on with for our community for disability. And I am gonna say this is my last meeting chairing this council, and I truly enjoyed my time being up here. But I do want to just reiterate that when we're given stuff for this council, we definitely need to go over it and review it before we get to these meetings so that we're fully prepared and that we can tackle these issues within this meeting and not wait 3 months for another meeting. So I just hope that you guys just keep that in mind and pass the change on to Christy Gonzalez when she comes for the October meeting. So if there's no further business, the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Nice talking to you. I'm one of the 3. Look at the board. Okay. Okay, great.